Each week, I try to put together just a sentence or two that's attention grabbing, concise, and is going to let you know what the show is going to be about. But this week, I just got two words: Charlie Kirk.
Welcome to No Apology with Emilee and Chris. It's a variety talk show designed to have you laugh louder, dig deeper, and live larger in the Lord Jesus Christ. And I told Emilee earlier today that if we do a Charlie Kirk retrospective, it's going to be kind of hard to do the laugh louder portion of our show.
Yeah.
But you just never know. Back in the day when we were the Chris and Emilee show, there'd be a school shooting or something, and people would actually tune in because we would still have joke time. We'd still kind of try to be normal. And I guess, I mean, normally...
Easier said than done, right?
Exactly. Here we go.
Yeah.
But when we started talking about maybe doing a Charlie Kirk retrospective, my feeling was, why? I mean, it's going to be literally a drop in the media ocean because everybody's talking about it. But the whole point of No Apology goes hand in glove with Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, helping motivate us to want to share our faith with abandon.
Yep.
And Emilee, as you've been looking at this, it's been a time of weeping. It's been a time of reflection. And I do not want to turn it into a time of I told you so, but on the third or fourth No Apology show, we said that they want to kill us.
We've been
and
talking
people
about
didn't
it.
really think I was sane by saying that, but yet here we are.
Yeah, it's not just hyperbole. I mean, these are serious things, and a lot of people, as they study this and they look into it, they're able to look down the road long term and see where these roads and these ladders really do lead to. Charlie Kirk was one of those people. He was very, very good at it, and he would warn people that, hey, look, if we don't get on these campuses and we don't reach this next generation, he's been doing that for years. He said, in 10 years, our Democrat Party will be led by full-on communists. And even conservatives laughed at him and said, again, hyperbole. Well, here we are. But Chris, when we got the news about Charlie, literally as we clicked finish when we recorded our show last week. And we just sat there stunned for a while, still sitting in our studio chairs. And we thought, should we go back on? Should we do another thing? And we kind of
talked about just cutting that show about AI and then maybe taking a breath and seeing if Mike had more time to come back.
Yeah.
And we would do like a, breaking news kind of show. And it's like, that's not really where No Apology has gone.
Right.
It's not at that level. So why don't we? And so we cleared our schedule, went home, and we're praying and weeping that, okay, this is now the time. And now when you see all the liberals dancing on Charlie's grave, it's like, this is now, can you now see what we've been talking about for a decade?
I've used this phrase before. Let's just hold our water, hold your breath, see how things unfold. And this was a great opportunity for me to just, practice what I preach, right? And so it was really good. Oftentimes it's good to take a moment, let events completely unfold, and let these things sit in your brain for a while, process them, absorb them, and try to just go to the Lord to help you really see the truth and the reality about what's going on. And so we knew that very day that this is what we would be doing this day for this show. And so that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, where do you want to start? Because I have a whole bunch of handwritten notes that could turn into really good theological discussions honoring Jesus, or it could turn into Rage Against the Machine.
We're not going there today.
Yeah.
There's no need for that. There's no need for that. You said there wouldn't be laughter.
I know. I meant that we're not, it's,
I know.
Us, so it's going to be laugh louder, dig deep.
That was one thing that Charlie was really good at doing. I mean, he would take the most ferocious insults and, people throwing stuff at him and threatening him, and he would smile. And he would, it's okay, and so on. So I think we can take our cue from that today. And yeah, there is a lot of emotion that comes with this, and it's okay. It's okay to be mad.
Yeah.
If you can't be mad now, when can you be mad? Right.
Right.
But
he had one of the most secure relationships with Jesus of anybody I've ever saw. And I think the thing for me is that having been in broadcasting for over 40 years, having been in every kind of different auditorium type scenario over the last 40 years, I don't hold a lot of people in high regard.
Right.
It's like
You don't.
I don't, and it's not that I look down on anybody.
Right.
I appreciate this skill set. I appreciate that skill set, but it's very few people on the planet where I've looked at them and said,
Wow.
"Wow,
Yeah.
I know I couldn't do what you do." And Charlie was one of them. And from the time he was 20, 21 years old for the last decade, I've just stood in admiration of this kid and just loved how at the end of the day his arguments was always back to proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. He didn't debate, he proclaimed in his debates. It
Yeah.
was phenomenal.
And he very rarely, there were a few occasions when I saw him come off the chair. I mean, there were moments when he got very riled. But aside from those two things, he was dialoguing about really heavy stuff, and he never did just lose it. You know what I mean? He never just completely lost it. Even in those moments where you could tell he was so upset, he stayed on course. He stayed on the topic. He stayed in the rational dialogue that he was in. And that was a very admirable thing about him. That I watched him a lot.
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of people who said, I didn't know who he was. I talked to a lot of people who were like, I've heard of him, but I never watched his stuff. I watched stuff of his pretty much every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like my son. You know what I mean? And I was just like so proud of him. But anyway, we're almost a week removed. We're a couple days short of a week removed from the event, and things have kind of settled in. A lot has been said. I don't want to waste time rehashing things that have already been said.
What else can be? I mean, there's thousands of podcasts and media outlets covering every angle of the Charlie Kirk experience, life, death, the perpetrator, all of that stuff. And we have a couple guests waiting in the green room that we're going to be bringing on in just a little bit. But Emilee, you really felt like you wanted to have a platform to share some of your thoughts.
Yeah, because you can go 100 miles in 100 different directions with something of this magnitude. And so I got to try to stay really focused. The big takeaway, I think, over the week for me was just the impact that he had. And there were people, of course, like you said, Chris, dancing on his grave. We didn't really expect anything different.
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't expect was the magnitude that it has really affected people. And people are coming forward and saying how much Charlie Kirk impacted his life. And I started thinking a while back, we did a show, it was around February, where Asbury College had that quote unquote revival.
Mm-hmm.
And we started talking about it and asking questions. What does revival really look like? And I want to kind of go back to that because if anything, the news coverage of that made people start asking, what does revival look like, right? Real revival. And when you kind of research it and you look at history and you compare when you look back and say, yes, actual revival happened then, there's some really key things that do go on when revival takes place. One of them is there's just a flat out return to God's word. People start reading God's word again.
And that was what the problem with Asbury is. It was mostly songs and it was mostly people talking about their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you got into the Asbury revival, the more contrived it became.
True.
And
they don't have
a history of changed lives. And so I think of 9/11 being a possible revival. And yet it didn't last. After 60 days, people started, after a year, after 2 years. I mean, we still had some never forget stuff a decade later.
Yeah.
But I don't want this to be that. I want this situation to actually last.
That gets me to this very next point that I was going to bring up that we talked about on the last show. And that is true revival brings about a cultural shift. And I don't know yet, time will only tell whether an actual shift in culture takes place, but clearly Charlie had an effect on a lot of people, enough so that he made a difference. Another thing that marks revival is it doesn't happen inside the church walls. It happens out in the streets, out in the fields, out in the public square, and the culture at large, the saved and the unsaved, are a part of it. Another thing that a true revival, a mark of it is that it is preceded by either intense persecution or a major event or issue.
Yeah.
We look at things like abolition, we look at the Reformation, we look at a lot of things throughout history, and it was messy, right? And so that's a mark as well. That's what precedes the big shift in culture.
Right.
So,
And in that shift, you have to have churches that have pastors and preachers who will actually share the truth. There's a thing going around saying, for all the preachers who said, don't preach Charlie Kirk, preach Jesus.
right.
You know, I wonder how many told a cute story about their kids or gave an illustration of praying for a waitress or shared an example of
Right.
evangelism on an airplane.
Yeah.
And preachers use examples of everyday life all the time. Why
Mhm.
would we not talk about the one thing that's on everybody's mind?
Right.
In fact, I've seen other things out there that if you didn't preach or talk about Charlie Kirk at all in your church service, you should probably leave that church.
Yeah.
And there were a handful of national fake ministries, false prophets, if you will, who avoided it because they're not in it for the kingdom of Jesus. They're in it for their own kingdom, and you can't alienate all those potential left-wing givers,
Right.
you know? So that's what it comes down to a lot of times.
I'm right there with you, Chris, where I'm really hopeful and prayerful that this is not just a flash in the pan. I really, really hope so. But like I said, what really stuck out in my mind is this event as opposed to many others, and the Asbury revival being just the latest of them. True revival is not just a bunch of Christians getting together inside the church and singing and praying and whatnot. That's not what revival is. It's messier. There's martyrs. But what ends up happening is people stand up and say, no more the status quo.
My patience has run so thin, I question sometimes my walk with Christ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I need to be patient and loving, and sometimes it's like I don't have the love no more. You know? You know, when I see people that are dancing on Charlie's grave and other people are standing up against that, it makes me happy. And I know that it might not in certain circumstances, and in others, I think it's the right thing, especially when you consider reprobate mind and what all that means. And I don't know if we're going to get into that
I hope we kind of get
today
into
or tomorrow, but anyway.
Yeah, lives changed, cultures changed, the church grows. That is the mark of revival. It is not for the saints. It's for the lost. And so hopefully the martyrdom, because that's what it is, of Charlie Kirk will bring about. We know he already has. I hope it continues to bring about a lot more.
I hope it doesn't fade.
That's the big thing for me.
Let's bring in our guests for today. Of course, our news director, Mike Shaw from Texas. Mike has been with us since 2006 is when we first met. And he was the news director for the radio station that we were the morning show on. So he would come on our show. And then we started an internet radio station. And I called up Mike and I said, I got like $400. Would you want to do some news stories? And he said, sure. So he did news stories for us for a year on our internet radio station, which was fun but short-lived. And then Katie Petersen is with us. And Katie is one of our youth leaders here at the church that I serve. And she is also a passionate person when it comes to Charlie Kirk. And she used to be on the left and is now on the right. First of all, Katie, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. Calling me out already.
Mike, good to have you back, Mikey. I'm really looking forward to your perspective because we have not talked much since last week.
We have not. And, you know, I had to avoid the news when it first happened. I was just so upset, angry, and shedding tears all at the same time. It's just, I was at a loss. I had to avoid it. So I feel underprepared, but I think I have some political perspective, at least that'll help. And then, you know, we can always riff. So that'll work.
Mike Shaw is never unprepared. I've learned that over time.
And Mike was the director of an Arizona chapter of the Republican Party, and he was called out on national television. And so you've experienced some of the left's vitriol up close and personal, much like Emilee and I have. And once you've done that, there's no going back. You realize you're not dealing with political bias. You're not dealing with differences of opinion. We're talking about a spiritual separation. And you saw that, and we've saw that. Is the left really going after the Charlie Kirk, they were going after thoughts and prayers leading up to it. Thoughts and prayers, and now they're just going after Charlie's death as if this is a good thing. What's been your perspective, Mike?
I have seen that on some of the national networks, the legacy media, especially early on, and they got a bunch of pushback, and I think they've backed off on it a little bit. CNN's still not as bad as the MSNBC one. The MSNBC, they're just, I don't know what they are. They're evil is what they are.
Demonic lost folks, reprobate mind folks. Yeah.
Retrograde mind for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the spiritual warfare, which is behind all of this, obviously, they're on the wrong side of history on that, and the wrong side of the present. And they're getting lots of pushback. A lot of them don't care. CNN, they've backed off, and that's good. And we've had a lot on the left that have been celebrating Charlie's death, as you talked about. And many of them have had pushback and have been fired. So yes, you have your free speech, but you're not always immune to the consequences of that free speech. And if you're out there spouting, they're the tolerant ones, right? But they're the ones that are spewing the hate and that are condoning violence and sometimes even condoning further violence. And there need to be consequences for that. And I think that's one of the things that's coming out of this assassination of Charlie, is that we're not going to take it anymore. As far as, being, turning the other cheek is one thing, but having consequences for the left's actions, we've seen where that's led, and not standing, and we need to stand. Charlie, what did he do? He stood on the truth. He was bold.
Yeah.
And what did Jesus say? The world will hate you because of it. And
well, I think that the purge that's happening is necessary. And you brought up MSNBC, so let me jump in here with this. MSNBC, which cheered firing workers for refusing vaccines, now says getting people fired for celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination is out of hand. And as a host claims, the purge is meant to target educators, healthcare workers, and government employees. That's amazing to me.
You're welcome to your opinion. I don't care what your opinion is. You're welcome to it. If you're going to condone violence and advocate for violence, if I did that, if someone on the left was murdered or killed or assassinated, first of all, I wouldn't do that. But if I did that and advocated for violence, I would expect to be fired. I'm sorry. And so if you do that, expect to be fired.
Yeah.
If I can jump in.
Yeah.
To me, one of the scariest things about this was that it wasn't stories about someone in, a different state. There were people on my Facebook feed who I've looked them in the eyes, and I've had conversations with them saying things like, even mildly putting it, disgusting.
Yeah.
Them saying, well, I didn't agree with him. He didn't deserve it, but...
Mm-hmm.
And then I share those exact same values. Do I also deserve that? If I were to get killed, would you still say, well, she shouldn't have been saying those things?
Yeah.
How did they respond to you, Katie?
Not well.
Yeah.
It did not go well.
And that's part of being strong at this time,
They weren't able to see the rationale. And I think that's something that's very important that we're seeing. And any of you can jump into this, but I hear a lot of, Charlie Kirk was not the only one that did this. I hear from a lot of people like Ben Shapiro, and there's many of them that they would go on to college campuses and you could talk to them, even if they were very, very liberal, and you could talk to them about things like the law of non-contradiction. And those things would sink in their brain, and they'd start thinking, and they could have a dialogue with you back and forth over rational things. And sometimes you could sway them, sometimes you couldn't, but they would understand those basic realities of rationalizing something. That's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them especially the ones that no longer go to the college campuses, have said, I can't do that anymore. Paul Washer is one of them. He said, I can't go on college campuses and talk to someone because they don't have a conversation. They just let loose with vulgarities and vitriol, and it's completely irrational.
When you go to Romans chapter 1 and you realize when Jesus says he gives them over to a debased mind or a reprobate mind, that there is no coming back, and that's actually under the judgment of God. So this country's been under the judgment of God. And I just want to give you a couple different things here, and then I'd like Mike and Katie each to respond to this. NPR, this is what one of their quotes on NPR was. Reaction to his death is complicated. No, NPR, you're just loser psychopaths. That's the reality. You're lost.
Yeah.
Another person said, chiding both sides for Charlie Kirk's murder is not only an act of cowardice, but a sign of submission to the moral authority of the killer and his accomplishments. Bada bing, bada boom. I believe in that. NBC employee Kirsten Therrett Peters is a senior specialist. And you know what? She's a specialist in? Standards and practices at NBC for children's content at Peacock Kids. She created and posted a vile social media post mocking the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This woman should not be doing anything related to children.
Right.
As a mother, Katie Petersen, what's your first reaction to hearing some of those things? Are you happy some of these people are being fired?
I try to not take too much joy in other people's pain, but I am human. And you have a freedom of speech in this country. None of them are going to jail.
Right.
You do risk getting fired when you say things.
Yeah.
I do. I couldn't go in and call my boss all the names and expect not to get fired.
Yeah.
You can't even work at a Burger King and tell off a customer and not expect to get fired.
Right.
Think about it.
That's the free society. That's the free society. I think, Katie, you hit the nail on the head, that you're not going to jail. You're not being threatened with your life, but employers do have the freedom to look at someone and say, you know what, that's just not the caliber of person we want working in this environment.
Not a protected class.
Right. And I think that we have been beat down for so long, told to sit down and shut up, that now that we're seeing a little justice, we really want more of that justice. Mike Shaw, what do you think?
Well, justice has been a long time coming, and I could give you 100 examples, and I know you could do the same. This has been a slow burn for a very long time. It started with political correctness in the 80s, and it's been a slow creep ever since, especially in our college campuses. And to have someone like that in charge of NBC Kids, why are we not surprised? Was anyone surprised listening to this when Chris said that? I wasn't.
No.
I kind of expected it.
Yeah.
Were you surprised that NPR said what NPR said? No. Why do you think we want to defund them? Let them sell Big Bird, stuffed animals and fund their network that way.
I thought you were going in a different direction. We said Big Bird.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah.
I thought we were going to have something else come out there.
There you go, laughing louder again.
So I'm the grouch right now, with NPR. But it's like, we don't need to fund that. They're partisan. They have been for a long time. Not a surprise. And we've let this happen.
Yeah.
And the beauty of Charlie Kirk and standing so strong and so boldly on God's word, Charlie, no one goes to college campuses anymore because they started burning down the college whenever a conservative would show up. And you would have riots and people would get hurt.
Yeah.
And you had to have
they justify that. They justify that as in, this is what we need to be doing. And I want to see incitement charges against some of these influencers that have 1 million+ followers who are actually saying, kill whitey, kill homeowners, kill conservatives, kill anybody with a MAGA hat. They've been saying that since Charlie Kirk was assassinated last week. And I don't know of any of them that got arrested. Emily?
Well, I want to take it a step further because I think we all agree we're not surprised by that. But there is something that did surprise me, and that is I did see a few so-called conservative politicians and talking heads who were going along the lines of there's blame on both sides. Both sides need to tone down the rhetoric. I was shocked by that. I was really shocked by that because I mean, I'm not saying that conservatives don't have a bent towards sin like everybody else. No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is for every conservative who goes and does some awful thing, I mean, you got 25, 30, 50 far left liberals who are doing even worse. And so it's like you're swatting flies while the Titanic sinks. Like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
And so I wanted to get perspective, Katie, from you first, because I don't know if you've seen any of that. And then Mike, what are your thoughts when people now are like, well, let's just get along and both sides are to blame. And we just had a conservative flat out assassinated in front of us. What are your thoughts about those conservatives, Katie?
The whole thing breaks my heart into a million pieces. And when you brought up the point about people saying, well, it's on both sides, and they want to talk about was it the senator from Minnesota,
Mhm.
Holman? They want to keep bringing her up, and that's fair. But when you go down the list from the other side, it goes on and on and on and on. And back to your point from earlier, them just being totally irrational.
Yeah.
They're totally irrational. They want to now say that that Charlie shooter was a conservative,
Mm-hmm.
ignoring all common sense and logic.
Yeah. Lying is their forte. They can lie about anything at any time, and it doesn't matter. They've never had consequences for about the last 5 years because they've owned the media, and they've been able to just steamroll anybody that doesn't have anything to say about that, right?
Yeah.
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 And so the lies get frustrating. And, you know, the shooter was not a conservative. He come out of a conservative home. But Mike, what's your take on that question?
So yeah, what Emilee's talking about just chaps my hide and has for a long time and for very personal reasons. You know, I lived a mile from where Gabby Giffords was shot in Tucson, Arizona, and I was part of the local Republican Party at the time, and I was good friends with the leader of the Tucson Tea Party. I was doing Tea Party videos at the time, even, and after that shooting, the local sheriff, blamed the Tea Party for the rhetoric, which was absolutely false. The
Mm-hmm.
shooter was crazy and had his own deranged reasons, and that ended up being the truth. And then the Bushes, along with the Clintons and everyone, and they came up with this political organization to bring down the rhetoric in politics because of Gifford's shooting. And that makes me mad because what that does is it hides the truth of what really happened. And they tried to ban our guns because of what this guy did, and none of it was relevant. And when you don't expose the truth and you don't have conservatives standing up for the truth like Charlie did, then we lose ground.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we lose
and
ground.
our
And we lose
experiences-
ground. And
our
evil
exper-
gains ground.
And our experiences dictate the fact that we finally have enough is enough. Emily?
Well, I'm glad you said that because I was going to ask you what your thoughts were on that. Before I got to, there was one politician that it was a breath of fresh air, and that was J.D. Vance. He sat in to guest host Charlie's show Turning Point today, I believe that was. And this is what he said, and I just want to read it. It's an excerpt from an article, and I thought it was really interesting. And I think personally he hits the nail on the head, and then I want to turn it over to you, Chris. J.D. Vance said, I really do believe that we can come together in this country. I believe we must. But unity, real unity, can be found only after climbing the mountain of truth.
Yeah.
And there are difficult truths we must confront in our country. One of the difficult truths, Vance said, was that political violence was not a both sides issue. He said if both sides have a problem, one side has a much bigger and malignant problem, and that is the truth. We must be told. That problem has terrible consequences, he said, pointing to uh, shootings of the past. And so I think personally, he hit the nail on the head. Chris, what do you think?
Well, I think that, we've got a lot of problems that will not ever go away. And I believe that propaganda and the cancel culture have taken us to a point of no return. I have said for the last 6 or 7 years, how can we coexist with this group of people? I have said that they have come out and that their platform is one of wanting to kill us. Oh, you're just doing your morning show shock jock attempt. No, I'm not. The cancel culture has been real. Propaganda has been real. Since 9/11, think about this. Our unity was so strong after 9/11, after we were attacked. And why was it so short-lived? Why? Because they started coming after George W. Bush in a way that had never happened before. We didn't like Clinton much. They didn't like, George H.W. Bush. They didn't like Reagan. And in fact, George W. Bush in 2004 was walking across the platform headed towards the helicopter, and he had Bernie Goldberg's book called Biased under his hand. A president walks with a book and shows it to the press. It's for a reason.
For a reason. It's intentional.
We did not get biased for very long. We went into full-on propaganda. In 2008, the media became starstruck, and journalism gets what I consider to be put on life support. Journalism started to fade when Barack Obama on Super Tuesday, I believe that was a turning point. You remember me talking about that ad nauseum on our old shows. That was a turning point. 2012 to 2014, you've got the Ferguson thing. You've got Benghazi. You got the rise of ISIS. Journalism dies and is replaced by demonic possession and truly corrupted blind guides, brainwashed patsies with zero critical thinking or reporting. And then they just became mantra grifters. 2015, Bruce Jenner gets the ESPY at the ESPN games, and the game is now on full speed. Emilee wrote a post at that time, and it was how Bruce Jenner could never totally know what it like to feel like a woman. She posted it on her personal Facebook page, and we knew something was going wrong because after 3 hours, it had catapulted to 10,000 likes. And we had people texting us, I think you're going viral, Emilee. By the end of the day, it was over 100,000 likes. Then the transgender people called Facebook and reported her page as having pornography. What do you do then? Well, Facebook would just tear it down, and after about 30 to 45 days, and after review, they'd give you your account back. But that stops it. It was such common sense, 7 or 8 paragraphs of just incredible common sense that completely destroyed the transgender narrative. Okay, we happen to have a person in a newsroom that knew somebody high up in Facebook, and he called them and got her post her account reestablished.
To be connected.
Yeah. How long were we down? About 5 hours?
No, it was a couple days. At first, when they kept reporting it as pornography, I would go in and say, no, it wasn't. And then they put it back up. And literally 45 seconds later, it would go back down.
Right.
And I did that for about 10 times. And then it was probably about 2 or 3 days. And the person that I worked for contacted their connection within Facebook, and then I got it back. So
right, and when it came back, it went to 500,000 likes, 250,000 shares, and we quit counting at 111 death threats. We left the country for 21 days. We had friends that lived in the Cayman Islands that had an extra room, and we went and lived, suffering for Jesus on the beach for 21 days. But the reality is that when you realize they will kill you, that changes things. We've been dealing with this now since 2015, so we get it. And everybody's eyes are open now to the fact, yeah, they'll kill you. Not only that, they'll dance on your grave. And then back to the propaganda story, and then I'd love to get Katie's insight on it. I'd love to get Mike's insight on it. Then came Russia. And then it was, how was that covered? The worst was the censorship during COVID. They piled on with any discussion, any dissension, anything anti-left, they just piled on you. Your YouTube channel would get cut off. I'm not even sure that this show with what we're saying right now will pass muster, right? Anything anti-left, Your Facebook account was frozen. You guys were all there, right? I mean, did you,
Yep.
any of you buddy lose their Facebook account? And so, well,
Mike's nodding.
yeah.
Yes, he did.
No, I was still on that team at that point.
Okay.
Okay.
It became no longer worth it to speak out. Okay. What about the COVID shot and the media shaming people? I mean, I remember driving on an interstate and I saw a billboard that said, "Don't let your last words be, I wish I would have got vaxxed." You know, I mean, it was just nonstop. And so the rhetoric that's out there, there has to be accountability. And one of the things the left is really good at, Satan's really good at it, is what I call the PR strategy of, I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I? Oh, it's both sides. Both sides need to just tone it down a little bit. No, it's the lefts want to kill us. They think that we are evil. We know they're evil because biblically we cannot stand with them. And I've been talking about this for more than 15 years. And yet here we are now where people are finally having their eyes open. And my concern is that the potential revival we're standing on, the potential change, the spines of steel that are growing up right now, that it won't last because I've seen it not last in the past. What can we do to make it last? And how has it changed your life? Let's start with you, Katie Petersen.
Well, before I do that, I would like to also add something else that the devil is really good at here is telling us that what we are doing telling us that what we are doing is loving. That's how I think a lot of college kids, that's how I got sucked over into the left. It's loving.
Yeah.
They just want to love each other.
Yeah.
They just want to love each other.
Yeah.
Just put a mask on.
Good. Yeah.
Just get all the vaccinations.
If you loved your neighbor, you'd wear a mask and get a vax.
Yep.
Right?
Let me ask you a question. It's kind of two questions in one. What was it that made you start thinking, I need to rethink some of the things that I believe? And what was the final straw where you were like, no, I'm out. I'm
gosh.
out.
I will
That's
tell
a big
you.
question.
I will tell you. No. It's a long story.
That's
I don't know how long
okay.
we're out here, but
We got time.
okay. So when Chris first came to Fresh Encounter, it was it right in the middle of the pandemic? What year did you come here?
2022 in July is when we
Yeah.
arrived.
Okay, so we were kind of over it at that point.
It was
Coming
really at the
out.
tail end. The mask stuff had all been sorted out.
Okay.
There was no more mask mandates. Vax mandates were still being in play. In fact, the vax mandates, some of them were just lifted recently.
Yeah.
But it was the tail end. We were moving on in a new direction.
Okay, so I say this with love now, but when you first came, I remember going into my boss's office, who is a very godly man, and I would tell him, I don't want to go to church and listen to Fox News every Sunday. I want to go and I want a feel good sermon about how to make my marriage better. And, I want the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, he gave me a very godly answer of that's not what church is for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But my ears were still shut at the time.
Yeah.
They were still shut at the time. I can't remember exactly what it was, exactly what clip it would have been. I can tell you I was in an echo chamber of the left, which is where I think they all are. I can tell they're there because I've been there before, and when I see their rhetoric, I know where it's coming from because I've been there. And I remember it must have been some clip where someone had taken something that Ben Shapiro had said, probably at a college campus, like what Charlie was doing, and I was supposed to hate what he had said. I was supposed to hate it. Oh, what an evil man. And instead, my heart goes, but that kind of made sense, though, didn't it?
There you go.
Ding, ding.
Rationale is kicking in.
Doesn't it kind of make sense that you can't be a boy if you're a girl? Isn't that common sense?
So was that kind of the topic that made you go,
That was the
hey,
biggest one.
Wait a minute. Okay.
That was the biggest one.
Okay.
But the other huge thing was, Chris, you did a sermon one day, and I think you've told me you don't even remember saying this, But it's one of the biggest things that changed
we're
my life.
recording on Monday. I don't remember what I said yesterday.
Okay. So you, in a sermon one Sunday, as I'm sitting there listening to Fox News on Sunday morning.
Which is funny because we don't even watch Fox News.
I don't. Yeah, I know that's an analogy I'll have to have a response for. But go ahead.
At the time, I didn't watch Fox News either. It was
Right,
just
right.
my example.
But that's their mantra.
That is their mantra.
is their mantra,
Absolutely,
yeah.
it is.
It's a good turn of phrase. But anyway, you're in church listening to possibly some right-wing propaganda.
Listening to right-wing propaganda, and you said to me, not to me. Well, yes, you did say it to me. The other people were there and were able to hear it too, but you were talking to me, and you had said, Jesus is love. He is love. He is definitely love, but it is a pendulum. He is also truth.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot just be love, 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 love. And that's where the left likes to be. Love, 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 love.
Yeah.
Sometimes the right can be truth, 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 truth.
Yeah.
And it needs to be both. It has to be both. And that was the biggest light bulb moment. The biggest light bulb moment. Because listen, well, they're older now, but when they were little, ooh, that stove is shiny and red. Should I touch it? Well, why should I tell him no? Is that loving for me to tell him no and what he's going to do is
He'll
bad?
feel sad if you say, no, you can't do that.
But he's going to burn his hand unless I tell him, hey, that's stupid.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And
Yeah.
not only that, but if you see him and he's going to do it, you might scream at him. No.
Mhm.
Don't do that. And you can't turn around and go, well, if you would have just said it nicer, I probably would have. No.
yeah. And it did not happen overnight. It was not Ben Shapiro clip one day and
Yeah.
Sunday sermon the next day. It was a slow road.
Yeah.
And Ben Shapiro might have started it, but when I came across Charlie Kirk and he was coming at everything from such a loving Christian perspective.
Happy warrior. That's what they called him.
Okay, I have to rethink some things.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this, it was embarrassing.
Mm.
I was embarrassed. I'm embarrassed now. I'm embarrassed now to tell you guys this story, right? That's probably my pride.
Yeah,
But
it is.
But that's the thing that, whenever we come, all people, even Christians today, like we are continually coming out of things that it's like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. I wasn't right there. And it's like embarrassing. You tell it. But when you know the forgiveness of Christ Jesus and you know how it was him that sets you on the right path, I mean, there's such a comfort there that it gives you the braveness, like what you have today, Katie, to come and share and tell people because it's important.
Well, I just want to say, Katie, that it is understandable pride. It's just like the pride I'm going through where it's like, I don't do Fox News on Sunday. I mean, I might yell, you're all stupid. I might do that before the Fox News comment.
you don't. I don't think that anymore.
No,
That makes
I know, but the reason you're able to share it with joy is because that understandable pride gets washed away because Jesus has his blood over the doorpost of your soul. So now you're about the truth, and that's where self-depreciation comes in, and you're able to just share it. And it's just like, yeah, my pride makes me not really want to say, but it's okay because it's good because Jesus has redeemed me.
Can I ask one more question? I want to ask you, Katie, what about, were there, and you don't have to name names or anything, but what about like family members, friends in your life? Did they help you? Did you have any of those in your circles that just kind of encouraged you in that direction?
I did. So my boss was a big one.
Yep.
Because he and I have been working together for 14 years now, and he's always been.
He didn't hate you because you were a liberal.
No. And I tell you what would happen. There would be some sort of news story that would really get under his skin, and he and I. We just had a conversation today that wasn't the most fun to have, and we've always been able to talk to each other without getting upset. And he would come in and sit in my office and he would say, Katie, tell me how you justify whatever this thing is that just happened on the news. Oh, I know. It was George Floyd riots.
Oh.
I remember that one specifically. We talked about that one. We talked about guns several occasions. And I'll tell you this, when we would have those conversations,
Mhm.
I would be able to answer his questions, but I would answer his questions the way I had been programmed to answer those questions. And now I don't need to when I have a conversation with someone, I don't need to try and remember what it was I've
A
been taught to
script.
say. I know it in my heart.
Yeah.
It's not something that I have to, go back through
Because you've rationalized it in your brain. It's become truth.
because it's true.
Yeah.
You don't have to remember truth.
Yeah.
Truth is there.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good point.
Yeah.
I
Mike
think
Shaw,
I'll be preaching next Sunday.
Mike Shaw, what have you seen as far as when you watch some liberals get their eyes opened and they come out? I mean, there's so many people that have left the Democratic Party
Mhm.
over the last couple years because of Charlie Kirk, and now that's been just fire on the, gasoline on the fire right now as people are leaving in droves as they see the true heart of the reprobate mind, demonic Democrats.
Right. I mean, sometimes, unfortunately, maybe it takes a big event like this for people's eyes to be open. When we had 100,000 people in the streets in London, we've had demonstrations in Germany, around the world. People are not only mourning the loss of Charlie, but they're standing up for the truth in what he stood for. And that's the beauty of who Charlie Kirk was. The reason why I got into politics and the reason I was a conservative and am a conservative in politics is because it's based on my faith. Which party aligns itself best with biblical principles, and then even individual candidates, which candidates are advocating for the policies that are going to forward biblical principles in the society. And that's where I was coming from. And I don't know anyone that did it better than Charlie Cook, because we were talking earlier about Charlie, about college campuses. College campuses were closed to conservatives because they would riot and they wouldn't have the event.
Right.
And Charlie, when Charlie first started, they would riot, but sometimes they would have the event. And over time, Charlie was drawing a crowd of people who wanted to see him,
Mhm.
even to debate him. It was an amazing thing that he was able to do, and he couldn't do that without God. He had an appointment by God to do what he did, and he looked at each person individually, treated them like an individual, respected them like God would as someone created in God's image, and then he would tell them the truth. Don't touch that stove because you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And standing on the truth in today's culture is very counterculture, like what Emilee was talking about. And that's because a lot of conservatives have allowed it to happen because we
Yes.
haven't stood for the truth along the way. And now we're way down the road.
I have something to follow up with that, but to set it up, not just what Mike said, but I want to show you this picture of the T-shirt. For you audio-only listeners, I'm showing a picture right now of a T-shirt that is a caricature of Charlie Kirk with what appears to be blood spurting out of his neck, and it says, "Debate this." They are celebrating a bullet in the neck of one of my heroes, and it just drives me crazy. I don't know this guy. I hate giving credence to somebody I don't know, but this is a doctor, and his name is Kevin Bass, and this is what he said. I'm going to quote him. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
And I want everybody's response on this.
Okay.
All right? We'll start with you, Emilee, and then we'll go to Katie, and then we'll go to Mike. As a former leftist myself, you must understand that the left will never stop until they achieve victory. They will not leave you in peace. They will not coexist. There are only two options: are roll over and be crushed, or crush them. Over and over, relentlessly, constantly, forever. As soon as you stop crushing them, they will come back and start to try crushing you again. They may hide it, but that is where they are. That is what they are doing always and forever. There is no peace. There is either crush or be crushed by the left. This is the truth. Do you understand? I can't fully agree with that because I know the power of Jesus Christ, but I kind of agree with that. What do you think, Em?
Well, I don't think he's necessarily talking about the individual person, although as
ideology, whatever you can do to crush them and their ideology. Get them
Right.
fired, that type of stuff.
Right. He's speaking into the ideology, and there will always be people ready to embrace that ideology. And so as, that person and Katie and many, many others are like, yeah, this is not making sense anymore, and they leave it. There's a whole bunch of others that are gravitating into it. The shooter of Charlie Kirk wasn't even in it that long, and he was radicalized into doing that.
They
And
say less than 2 years.
it's an ideology. It's a battle of the mind. The Bible spells it out so well when it says in Matthew 10:22, you will be hated by everyone because of me. Because of who? Because of Jesus. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. This is the way it is. It's never going to change. John 15, verses 18 and 19. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. There's a lot of conservatives out there that just are not getting the harassment that the Ben Shapiro and the Charlie Kirk are getting, because why? They're Jewish and they're overtly Christian.
Mhm.
And that's where the hatred stems from. Now, there's no consideration or care of the, collateral that might come with it, but that's where it starts, because it goes on to say, if you belong to the world would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. And that ain't going away
Right.
until Christ comes again.
Katie Petersen, crush or be crushed? Your thoughts?
I feel a little bit more hopeful in the fact that I learned today that Turning Point USA had 32,000 new inquiries
Wow.
to open new chapters
Yeah.
around the United States. Truth is a hard thing to crush.
Yeah.
Truth is a hard thing to crush, and kids are not stupid. So the kids that have not gone to college yet are the ones that Charlie really spoke to
Mhm.
and really connected with, because the children that had not yet been indoctrinated by our colleges are like, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Nothing he said. In fact, some people say that Charlie was kind of milquetoast when it comes to some other Republican pundits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Truth is a hard thing to kill.
Mhm.
You can kill a Charlie, but you can't kill the fact that when you're born a woman, you're a woman forever.
Yeah.
You can't.
The truth remains.
Yeah.
The
Mike Shaw.
truth remains. Exactly. Good point.
I love Katie's optimism, and I share it to a degree. We're seeing some of these movements. The truth is hard to crush, but I also remember my education from listening to Rush Limbaugh for years, and Rush Limbaugh used to make this exact point: the left is not going to quit. The left keeps pushing, and what the left does is they'll lie and they'll push and they'll promise and they'll get elected and then they'll overreach.
Mhm.
And then they'll lose and they get pushed back, but they've gained some ground. And then they'll do it again and again and again. And then pretty soon, look at the culture now compared to 10, 20, 30 years ago, because the left keeps pushing. And so I think Russia's right in the sense that the ideology, you can't coexist with it, because theirs is destructive and ours is for individual freedom and basically the prosperity of the world has never been so great under, capitalism and conservatism. And so, yes, we have to keep fighting for what's right politically. And of course, we always have to stand boldly for the truth of what's in the Bible. That's the only way people's lives are going to be changed. We have to do that in love. And we have to learn how to talk to each other without, getting in fights or gunfights or assassinations. And for some people, that's going to be impossible. And
Yeah.
Chris's point earlier about the media pushing, and then you get some mentally disturbed people out there that have been fed that propaganda. They might take an action like this. It's a small percentage, but it only takes one, as we saw.
Yeah.
And so we still need a lot of healing, but at the same time, we need to fight. That's why we like Trump, or that's why I like Trump, because he taught us how to fight. He doesn't take it.
Yeah.
He calls it out for what it is.
Yeah. You don't have to be
and-
afraid if someone's offended by what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear that the truth love pendulum, which was one of my foundational teachings that I wrote about 10 years ago, it's impacted not just Katie, but others. But to hear Katie share that story again warms my heart because I know that doesn't have anything to do with me. I've just been trying to be faithful, and we've suffered for our faithfulness. And the reality is when I say crush or be crushed, I'm talking about what Mike just shared and what others have shared, and that is that you have to go forward. You have to go forward. I always say proclaim the truth of Jesus Christ, don't debate. Charlie was a great debater, but in his debates, go back and watch all of his stuff. When he started proclaiming Jesus, he proclaimed and didn't debate. He just said it and let it stand there. That's what I'm talking about. Now, there's a talk show host named Steve Deace, and Steve has a nationally syndicated show. We used to call him Rush Limbaugh Light back in the day. We all liked Steve. I mean, and it turns out he's an Iowa guy. He's from Des Moines, Iowa, on a national stage. I didn't even realize he was from Iowa. I'd been knowing about him for years. I had no idea where he was broadcasting from. And when Bible Idiots first came out, he watched that with his family, reached out to me, and asked me to be a guest on his show. And so it was not a great appearance, I got to be honest. It was the day after Don Jr. got called out for trying to meet in a hotel room with Russian spies or something. I don't know if you remember that news story that was for 15 minutes, but that's what the hot topic of the day was. And me and my Bible Idiots movie got caught up in the middle of that on Steve's show. Anyway, Steve has been a voice of conservatism for a while, and so he's on Blaze TV. He's got a nice national platform. Him and Charlie Kirk 3-4 months ago, they're at a big church, and they're talking to a lot of people that have been invited, or people of capacity that can actually make an impact in our society with some of their financial gifts to keep things going. And they're standing backstage, and just before they walk out on the platform, I'm sure the MC is probably saying, so please welcome to the stage, and going to start saying some names. Charlie leans down into Steve's ear.
Because Charlie's like 6'5".
Yeah, and Steve's my height, And so Charlie leans down into his ear and he says, "Go hard." And then they walk out on stage. And that was Charlie Kirk. Rush Limbaugh is a one of a kind. Nobody's been able to replace Rush and never will. Charlie Kirk is the same way. And we have to go hard. And if you want to know where we go hard, it's in that pendulum of love and truth. I've talked to Emilee about maybe we should make some T-shirts that would benefit Fresh Road that say love hard or truth hard. Just no more patty cake.
Yeah.
No more patty cake. We've got to get after it.
Yeah.
And I think it would be great for final thoughts. Emilee, I want to hold your final thoughts till the end.
That sounds good.
Katie Petersen, what's your final thoughts on the topic as we batted it around and all these different things today? And thank you for being a guest on the show.
A wonderful guest, by the way.
Well, you're so welcome. Before I say goodbye, I have a question I'd like to ask.
Sure. Your question could be your final thoughts.
Okay.
We have no program director. Okay.
So I am curious. I had a not too small JFK assassination obsession for a little while. I love history, which might, that's early onset Republican.
Mike Shaw was not the shooter on the grassy knoll. Just so
I was 11 months old. I have an alibi. I was in the bathtub.
Yeah, I was about the same age.
No one here is old enough to really, really remember it the way we're going to remember last Wednesday.
Correct.
But do you remember having any conversations with your parents about that being as impactful as this?
Yeah, my dad actually saved newspaper clippings and magazines, and we still have it from 1960, whatever year it was. I'm such a loser. And it was very interesting because Chris was going to college. We were married, and he had a communications class. And we were going through some of our memorabilia, and I found this newspaper on JFK's assassination that my dad saved. And he was a conservative. My dad was ultra conservative. And the headline was printed in big letters in red ink. And Chris took it to his communications class, and his professor got all just like, oh, wow, where'd you get that? Because back in that day, using red ink in a newspaper was like they didn't do that. You know, it had
That
to
was
be
big
some,
doings.
yeah, it was big doings. And yeah, I remember my parents talking about it. And like I said, my dad was uber conservative, but it was a national shame
Yeah.
that took place.
I was a journalism major. That was a journalism class, and I was a religious education minor, which is why propaganda media and basically sold out mantra patsies drive me crazy, because our free press whole deal was based on objectivity.
Mhm.
And so it's just been heartbreaking. You used to have to, by the way, and Katie, you might not be old enough to remember this, but back in the day when you'd give your opinion on a news broadcast, they were required by ethics to write to put a commentary or opinion underneath your picture when you were talking.
Right.
So anyway,
Were there any stories of anyone from the right celebrating?
That was very interesting because I don't think that there were, and if there were, that it was so shameful. I don't think people really focused on that or gave it any credence. But the people that did, were glad about it were communists.
and they
were
were
the
publicly shamed, and they would have never
and they were
ever
publicly shamed
gone in public to
by
say
left
that.
and right together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now here we are, 2025, and communism is the ideology behind the left right now.
When I was the writer and director for the film Colors of Character, I did a lot of deep research on civil rights, and of course the stories about Steve Skipper in Birmingham, Alabama, and Martin Luther King Jr. spent a lot of time there. So the assassination of him was something that I did a lot of deep research on. And I remember being young, and my mom and my dad both really stressed how awful not only JFK and MLK was, but Bobby Kennedy as well. For some reason, my mom took Bobby Kennedy's shooting like worse than all of them. But again, we were all taught that we may not agree with everybody, but murdering over political things was different.
Mike,
Mike, what happened in your world, Mike?
Well, yeah. So, I don't remember a lot of discussions about it. In fact, my dad, also ultra conservative, mostly took the communist angle and talked about the Bay of Pigs probably more than anything.
Mhm.
And as a very conservative man with a Democrat president, had a lot of respect for JFK for how he got us through the Bay of Pigs and how he didn't blink through that. And so, at least in my family and what I've heard and what my sense of where the country was, is like even conservatives, even Republicans liked JFK because of his actions. And of course, he'd be considered an ultra conservative today. But back then, yeah, there was no celebration
No.
of his killing. The whole country mourned. And I liked Emilee's point too. It's like a national disgrace. How could we allow this to happen
Right.
in the United States of America?
Yeah.
Every African American that would have been living in the South during the MLK assassination remembers exactly where they were when that took place, as well as JFK.
Yeah.
They remember exactly where they were when they learned of both of those assassinations.
Yeah.
And I hope that our country takes the same approach to Charlie Kirk's
Well, and
assassination.
just a side note. I'm sorry, were you
No, go ahead. I was going to go to Katie, but I'm
Okay.
back in radio host mode. You go ahead.
It's okay. Just a side note, when Reagan was shot, in what year was that?
81.
81. I was in high school, and I remember the principal coming over the loudspeaker letting everyone know that the president had been shot and whatever, and it was just a gas. The whole student body was just no, what? And so we were all getting on the bus to go home, and there was one young man, he was younger than me, who got on the bus and he thought it was funny. And he started cracking a joke. And I tell you what, every single boy on that bus put an end to that really fast. Really fast.
Yeah,
And he never said another word.
Katie, you
Things have
you asked a question with your final thought moment, but we're not going to steal that from you. What other final thoughts do you have today?
I asked that question because my final thought is kind of a hot take.
Okay.
I think what happened on Wednesday is more impactful to the world than what that may have been. And I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Because
for sure, you have to defend him.
Charlie taught me.
He's saying
Charlie
stuff.
taught
You're
me.
not going to drop a matzo ball like that and then just say goodbye, everybody.
Nope. Charlie taught me to have a reason behind
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Right on.
So back in the 60s and in even Reagan in the 80s, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know when MLK got shot. I don't know what year that was. But these figureheads were so far away from you that they clearly were loved,
Mm-hmm.
but we live in a day and age where Charlie was my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie helped pull me out of ignorance into light. I listened to Charlie every day. And today I didn't know what I was going to listen to.
Yeah.
I had to find something else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we've been just putting it on a roll. It's
Yeah.
on our big screen TV, and it's just Charlie video after Charlie video after Charlie video. Something very therapeutic there,
Yeah.
because it doesn't get too heavy. He was called the joyful warrior,
Yeah.
and he really was. So it's
Well, Rush
therapeutic.
Limbaugh was one that we all hold up in high regard, just like Charlie Kirk. They're one of a kind. They're not going to be replaced.
Mhm.
But we knew Rush was going to get his. I mean, we knew the cancer was going to take him. He got the Presidential Medal of Freedom and had his moment at the State of the Union. And I mean, that was awesome. But we knew Rush was going to get taken from
Yeah.
us. This one was just
Such a shock.
it's not fair on one hand, and on the other hand, God's not up in heaven pacing the floor going, what are we going to do now without Charlie?
Yeah.
He's got a plan. And, it's just so flippant sometimes to say, but we have to trust him. Mike
Yeah.
Shaw, your final thoughts.
Yeah, that was really good. We talked a lot about Charlie, and there's even more to uncover. Turning Point USA may have single-handedly won this last election for President Trump.
I
The way
believe
they
that too.
chased, but yeah, I mean, the way they chased ballots, the way they had the ground game, I would say they outperformed the Republican Party apparatus in especially the swing states. TPUSA was a force. And so not only was Charlie passionate about God and biblical principles, but then that also fueled his passion for making a real difference in the
Mhm.
culture through politics and through getting right people elected who are going to pass the right policies that are going to get the country on track with those biblical policies. So you can't understate what the impact that Charlie Kirk had, and he was so young.
Mhm.
He started this in his early 20s is when he started all this.
Oh, I think
and
there's interviews of him in his teens.
Yes, when he was still in
Yeah.
school. Yeah.
18.
Yeah. So I mean, he was brilliant, obviously, and then he was driven, and he was passionate about all the right things. He was zealous for God, and his zealousness for God fueled him to make a difference.
Yeah.
And he did it in truth, and he did it in love. And he was taken away too soon from us. And now we're going to have, as his wife talked about, we're going to have hundreds of Charlie Kirks coming up through the ranks.
Mhm.
In a lot of ways, we are all Charlie Kirk now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they were chanting in South Korea. We are all Charlie Kirk.
Well, thank you for being with us, Katie. Thanks, Mike, as always. And my final thoughts before we
Yes.
turn it over to Emily for the football spike of the show. I want to share with you liberal comedian Michelle Wolf. Okay. We have to proclaim the gospel, and we have to stand firm, and we have to seek justice. And when we do that, we have to use appropriateness, and we cannot let our emotions get the best of us. But I want to read you what Michelle Wolf has done in the last 24 hours. And it is exactly why we need to be now diligent, spines of steel, no more wussing out, no more weak-wristed, well, we just got to love each other, and Jesus gets us. Let's stop that nonsense.
Charlie didn't like that either. Just so you know, the whole he gets us thing.
Yeah,
Charlie's not a fan either. Anyway.
Liberal comedian Michelle Wolf says she wishes Charlie Kirk would have lived long enough to see America turn completely away from Christ and to see his daughter grow up and become a witch. That is who walks among us.
Yep.
And again, I want to thank Katie. I want to thank Mike and Emilee. Take us out of here.
Yeah, don't listen to people when they say that you can't call them evil. You can't call people that disagree with you evil. I would say be very careful with it, but yeah, you can, because evil is among us. You may have seen the video where Charlie Kirk learns finally that Donald Trump won the election, and he literally breaks down and cries. Hold it together, dancer. Um, and he was speaking one time, and he asked one of his people he was talking to, "You know why I cried?" And they said, "Yeah, because you're a fascist and did whatever." And he talked through it. He said, "No, I cried because the Biden administration was coming after me. And when I heard that Donald Trump won the election, I knew I was not going to go to jail." So it takes us back to the scripture. What fellowship does light have with darkness? It doesn't. One will replace the other. They're not going to coexist. You must choose whether we're going to just go back to, well, you all have to get along, or are you going to let your light displace the darkness in your sphere? So I started the whole show with just 2 words, and I'm going to end the show with just 2 words. Go hard, and we'll see you back here next week.